Good afternoon again. So I'd like to introduce Minister Ng, Minister of Export Promotion, International Trade and Economic Development, to discuss a topic that is dear to many of us, manufacturers and exporters, which is part of the report that you've just seen Jane actually discuss with Al, which is the part of the report which is talking about encouraging domestic production and value-added export. So I just want to say that I've added the privilege, actually, of meeting and observing Minister Ng over the past years, and I believe she's probably one of the most passionate and determined minister that I've actually seen operate in this government. Like she tends, even with the incredible travel schedule that she has, that must be really exhausting at times. She makes herself really available and always gives her total and undivided attention, so I really appreciate that. So just to introduce her, the Honourable Mary Ng was first elected as the Member of Parliament for Markham Thornhill in 2017. She has previously served as Minister of International Trade, Export Promotion, Small Business and Economic Development, and as Minister of Small Business, Export Promotion and International Trade. Minister Ng immigrated to Canada from Hong Kong with her family and grew up learning about the struggle and eventual success that many new immigrants experience in Canada. Her years working for the Ontario Public Service, Ryerson University, and the Ontario Ministry of Education led to her being recognized as one of Canada's top-performing public sector leaders. Minister Ng is a devoted community leader who has always believed in the power of public service. She has 20 years experience in the areas of education, women's leadership, job creation, and entrepreneurship. Dear guests, please join me in welcoming the Honourable Mary Ng. Minister Ng, welcome.
Veronique, it's great to be here. Thank you. Before you get going, I want to say congratulations on over 150 years, the Canadian manufacturers and exporters. You know, you're like the age of the coming of the country, which really simply means that manufacturers and exporters have been there right from the very beginning because we are a trading country. So bravo, congratulations. So I wanted to start off with that.
Oh, thank you. So I think you've seen our recommendations, and there's really 5 themes into it. There's investment required in infrastructure, there's energy cost, there's government procurement, there's CUSMA, and there's investment in our SMEs. So I was just wondering if there's anything in that report that was surprising you, and just have your reaction over the recommendations in general.
Well, Elise, thank you very much. No, I'm not surprised by that, and I think the encouraging thing is that we're working on all of those fronts in one way or another. Maybe I'll start with critical infrastructure and transportation. I know that so many exporters, particularly if you're looking at, well, particularly for those that, have commodities or goods and need to get the goods into other parts of the world, to which makes, that essentially makes Canada the behemoth that we are. And sort of very early on and continue to be, this investment that we need to make around the transportation corridors and trade corridors is really a commitment. I was just sort of looking at the numbers. So $4.5 billion to improve the flow of the transportation system in Canada. And while the Transport Minister is the one that has responsibility for this, successive transportation ministers don't like it when I kind of start walking towards them because I will inevitably have come back from an international trip and I will say, so, it's really terrific that you're placing high priority on this work. Keep doing it and keep doing it faster because we need to keep doing this because we are an exporting country. and that's really important. So I'm not surprised by that at all. SMEs, having sort of recently handed over that part, well, not handed over, I mean, I don't have a say in it, the Prime Minister has a say in this, but the domestic small and medium-sized portfolio is under the leadership of Minister Valdez now, and it's terrific because her job and her sole job is to support and nurture Canadian businesses, small and medium-sized enterprises. But for those of you who I've talked to in this room and elsewhere, know how passionate I feel about SMEs, women-owned businesses, Indigenous businesses, businesses that have often been underrepresented in our economy. But the economic development part of my file very much continues to focus on SMEs, because if the logic is that 99% of Canadian businesses are small and medium-sized businesses, then many of them, of course, are wonderful Main Street businesses. And they're wonderful because they serve our communities, they create wonderful jobs around the communities. But guess what? There's a lot of those businesses, particular SMEs, and when I look at your data on CME's data, I mean, 96% of your members are SMEs, right? I mean, so making sure we support them in their growth to grow into international markets has been, has been a top priority. It's been a top priority, I think, from the day one that I've become a minister. So programs like the Trade Accelerator Program has helped over 1,000 businesses actually grow through international trade, and we know that SMEs are more productive. They have, they hire more people when they actually get into the sphere of growing and exporting, and making sure that agreements like CUSMA and many of our other agreements continue to be the agreements that you can count on. Is probably, I mean, I spend just as much time on that as I do promoting businesses, abroad, and then maybe the last couple of things, which is, making sure that that government procurement. One of the things that I think we can all continue to do the work and for sure do better at is buy Canadian, right? I mean, and at the same time, meet our international obligations and trade rules. I created a couple of things. One is the growth of Canadian companies, particularly in the medical devices and medical devices and med tech space. Because if you think about it in Canada, I mean, whose door might you knock on if you were a med tech company or a medical devices? Might you just go and walk up to CEO X and say, "Hi, I've got the perfect device for your heart surgery thing or your heart surgery procedure"? It just doesn't happen that way. So we created the Can Health Network, which is now across the country. And what's their job? Their job is to look specifically at Canadian solutions that can actually be adopted by the biggest operators who have tremendous procurement dollars and I consider them to be public sector because healthcare is public health here in Canada, and they have tremendous procurement dollars. So Can Health is doing tremendous work. I mean, and during the pandemic, whether it is the scheduling system that was for vaccines that took place in Nova Scotia, or the virtual healthcare systems that were necessary across the country, some of those were born out of Can Health. So that simply means that it's actually direct procurement by, big public sector. And then a couple of weeks ago, I was out in British Columbia, where the federal government is partnering with British Columbia, Innovate BC, on an integrated market that actually is about zero-emission light-duty vehicles. They're operating now sort of at the airport in Vancouver, as well as, pilot testing at a couple of ports. But essentially, they're solutions. They're solutions that can be adopted by who? By, in this case, the ports and the airport. Why? As big Canadian entities who have procurement dollars, who are looking at Canadian innovations in small and medium-sized businesses as a way of being the solution, and getting through things like tough, like cumbersome RFPs and that sort of thing, so that if you're working with them at the get-go, then you actually are adopting, you actually are procuring. So none of these surprised me, but also none of them, but as I said, all of these were sort of in one stage or another of working through as well. So it's pretty neat, but I would say to everyone here, I'm counting on all of us to keep doing this work together, and I very much appreciate this work that CMA does, which is the study and gathering this up, because it's tremendously helpful to government. So I appreciate this very much.
Thank you. That was a lot.
Oh, sorry.
No, just maybe digging just maybe a little bit on the CUSMA. So this morning we had the U.S. ambassador, and maybe talking about the elephant in the room, not meaning the U.S. party, of course, but or maybe we will eventually. But I mean, we have obviously a very important relationship with the United States, and we have our share of trade irritants. Obviously, I mean, he talked quite a lot about Buy America and Buy American, saying that it's only 1% of trade, and we have obviously other things that we share with the U.S. We have a very integrated supply chain with them. We talk about critical minerals. We talk about semiconductor. But we also talk about digital tax and obviously softwood lumber. But I mean, we talked also this morning a little bit about the sunset clause, and he said, yeah, maybe it's a little too early to that. I'm a lobbyist. I know it's never too early about talking about that kind of things, especially when we know that Congress is probably not thinking about that kind of things. But I mean, practically speaking, like, how do you see, and what is the government doing to preserve access moving forward, to the United States market?
Well, preserving access to this important market is absolutely top of mind for me and my colleagues in government. We do $1 trillion of trade with the United States. This is not small. They are our largest trading partner, so it is extremely, extremely important. So I spend a lot of time on it. I mean, as Canada's trade minister, and through the mechanism of our free trade agreement, it's so interesting. You call it CUSMA here, they call it USMCA. Mexico, they call it TMEC. But we have annual meetings where we sort of take stock of it, and and many of the committees that are formed under the trade agreement actually are able to report in to the three ministers, who I now affectionately coined as the three amigas, by the way. But it's extremely important, to answer your question. There is something that was negotiated in during the last round of, when we renegotiated CUSMA, that has a 6-year review. But I want to make clear about this because, in the United States, they often talk about the review as if we're going to somehow open up the agreement. That's not how it works. We review it at year 6, the first time, and at that point, we can decide as trading partners to continue beyond the 16 years. So in other words, the certainty is for 16 years. And we do a review, and I don't, I think the review is a good thing because it really allows all three partners to look at how we might take input from affected stakeholders and businesses and so forth. But it's important to remember that the first, sort of review at 6 years is to look at whether or not whether we all agree that we want to extend it beyond 16. So I say that to businesses because businesses always say to me that certainty and predictability is what you count on. So the reason I say this is because I want everyone to know 16 years. So that's a little ways away, and I agree, you want to be able to talk about it, but we've already started talking about it. I mean, I work with businesses and associations all the time, and while we aren't doing that sort of in some formalized way, it is, the inputs that are coming in from many of our stakeholder groups are there, and myself and my colleagues. In fact, I think the Deputy Prime Minister and I had a conversation with a group of businesses just, very recently, and it wasn't related specifically to this, but we are. I guess my point is that we always find ways to make sure that we are, and we'll get sort of probably a little bit more precise or more processy, I suppose. But it is listening to businesses and making sure that that's sort of fed in. And we have pretty decent processes right now. Like I said, the 1 year, they call it the FTC, the Free Trade Commission, that happens on July, on the anniversary of when CUSMA came into place. And so we do that. And on this one, we're going to keep our eyes on it. And I'm not shy at all, to my counterpart in the U.S. as well, to raise issues that are really important to us. When I think back, just not that long ago, piece of legislation that came through the American Congress that actually essentially, did not have credits for, credits attributed to electric vehicles that were going to be manufactured in Canada was just something we absolutely had to fight tooth and nail to secure. And now Canada's carved in. We're part of the North American supply chain for that. And maybe a final point I would make around Canada-US is that we really do have an excellent relationship between our largest trading partner. And the roadmap to Canada-US is something that we also work on quite diligently. So there it isn't just it isn't just electric vehicles. It's steel and aluminum. It is chips on semiconductors. I mean, so we do have modalities where we're working, myself on the trade side, but my colleagues as well in the different portfolios from environment to transportation to natural resources and so forth, where we are tightening up and to continue to work on the supply chain that is Canada and the U.S. And then together, we're able to do this stuff together. But we're also, when they talk about resilient of supply chains among other trading partners, I mean, Canada and U.S. does it together, and then we also work together to go into finding other resilient supply chain partners, particularly given how the world has changed of late.
Thank you. Actually, I'm talking about other supply chain. So you've been to Japan actually not too long ago.
I just got back the night before last.
Yes.
So
I'm
so I will
amazed at the jet lag.
apologize if well, you know what? You don't get jet lag anymore if you fly a lot. So maybe that's the recommendation, everyone. I feel like I'm on the plane a whole lot, and people sort of ask me, so how's the jet lag? I said, well, I don't know. It sort of feels like I'm in one time zone, which is a perpetual one. So it seems to work.
Oh, good for you. So your government has been creating this Indo-Pacific strategy, talking about expanding markets. And as part of Canada's approach and objectives, there's promoting peace, there's resilience, security, and probably more important in our context today is expanding trade and investment. And one of the major themes which is outlined in the strategy is to limit Canada's dependency on China and strengthening Canada's relationship with other countries such as South Korea and Japan. So can you describe for our audience, and there's kind of three sides to this question, so how this strategy will help increase Canada's export to that region, how this strategy will help actually SMEs, so is there a part actually in the strategy to help SMEs, and how do you think that this will increase the resiliency of our supply chain?
So thank you for that. Part of me being on planes a lot and long hauls is because I've actually spent a lot of time in the Indo-Pacific. There's not a lot of direct flights, I might add, except to Japan, which is where I was last week. And when I was in Japan last week, it was sort of the first big, what we call sort of the Team Canada trade missions under the Indo-Pacific strategy. But I was there earlier. I was there last year with a women-led trade mission, and then another one in 2019. But the region is extremely important in the Indo-Pacific because it is among the largest growing region in the world. It, in less than 10 years is going to, it has a large growing middle class, and I think it's, don't quote me, I think it's about in the next 10 or 15 years, it is going to be, among the most, not only the fastest growing, but with with citizens who actually have disposable income at a pretty high rate. So all this is to say is that for us, the Indo-Pacific is a number of countries. We already benefit really greatly in many countries on sort of on the Pacific coast through Canada's agreement through the CPTPP, and the CPTPP covers countries like Japan and Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Vietnam, Malaysia. And right now, I'm at the negotiating table with Indonesia. Indonesia is not part of CPTPP, but I'm at the negotiating table, and I hope to conclude those by 2024. But it's 280 million people. So next to the United States, which is like at a little over 300, it's Indonesia, and then sort of everybody else, and then and then you've got United States, and then those countries, which only there are a couple that are over 1 billion people. So I'm at the negotiating table with Indonesia to open up market access to that country. And I'm also at the negotiating table with what they call the ASEAN, so the Association of Southeast Nations, and that's 10 countries. Some of our CPTPP partners are in there, so Singapore is part of ASEAN, Vietnam is part of ASEAN, for example, Malaysia is a part of ASEAN, but other countries like Indonesia, like Thailand, like the Philippines, they're not a part of ASEAN. So we want to also negotiate a multilateral agreement with the ASEAN, and we're tracking to about the end of 2025 for that. But at the end of the day, trade agreements are just that, because many of you have also heard me talk about, Canadian exporters. And despite the fact that we have access to over 60% of the world's economy through trade and through our trade agreements, we export 12%, right? Our SMEs, 12%. So it means that we have a lot of opportunities to grow and to grow into these markets. And diversification has been something that this government has been very committed to. So growing those markets so that exporters can, in fact, have new customers, additional customers, in this part of the world. So last week when I took the trade mission to Japan, it was really wonderful. There were over 250 people representing 150 businesses, and a significant part, over half of those businesses were SMEs. And they were across many sectors. So you have, you have many in the hydrogen space, for example. You have others in the agri-food space. You have others who are in the digital and AI and quantum space. You had many companies in the manufacturing space, particularly along the value chain for electric vehicles, because we also just recently signed a memorandum of cooperation with Japan. For the battery supply chain, but also for science and technology. But when you think about, the region, next year, as part of the Indo-Pacific strategy and the trade missions that I will lead, I will be in the Philippines, I will be in Malaysia, I will be in South Korea, I will be in Vietnam, and I will be in Indonesia. So I'm taking 5 trade missions, Team Canada trade missions, into the region. We are opening a Canadian trade gateway based in Singapore. I always say that what's the purpose of the trade gateway? It's to be able to have a front door for the region to Canada, so that when Canadian businesses are looking into the region, you've got you've got a gateway, you've got a place to which you can enter the region, but it's also a place for the region to get to know Canada, so attracting investment, which is also hugely important. We've appointed Canada's first ever Canadian Indo-Pacific trade representative, who's going to be based out of Jakarta. Jakarta is also the home of ASEAN. So we're going to have sort of, strengthened boots on the ground. Our first agri-food office in the Indo-Pacific is going to be in Manila, with the ability for it to have a mobile capability in the region. So it's about having greater coverage of Canadian expertise and leadership in the region. It is working with business organizations, and there's a variety of them. I mean, the CanChams, which we call them, sort of, the chambers that are made up of Canadian expats and businesses that work in the region, who have deep knowledge of the region. As part of the Indo-Pacific strategy, we're providing some additional support and funding to them so that they can do more of that work to support Canadians. The point is that we're making sure that the trade toolkit and the supports that are there for Canadian manufacturers, exporters, and businesses can go into the region with some Canadian expertise. So the Trade Commissioner Service, Export Development Canada is expanding their presence in the region. They opened up a new office in Jakarta, another one in Seoul. They already have one in Singapore, and they're expanding their footprint elsewhere. So having the Canadian presence in the region, in addition to leading the trade missions, in addition to working with Canadian businesses in a way to facilitate those business-to-business meetings and prospecting, and then also to curate, if you will, or find investors who also are interested in investing in operations here in Canada, has been the work, and I'm looking forward to doing much more of that work in the region. I look forward to seeing many people in this room at one of those trade missions. someone else should share some of the, going on the plane jet lag with me.
Yeah, I was just looking at Dennis and I say, like, I think that some of our members probably would be interested in joining you. So I know you have to run, Minister. Just maybe a last question, if I can, or... Okay.
See, this is why I wanted to go in the Q&A, because I knew if I spent time up there, it was going to take away from this. So it means that we can't chat. So this is much nicer.
So, I mean, our companies and our exporters have to deal with a lot of uncertainties and geopolitical issues right now. But we've had our own share in Canada's with, obviously, with some supply chain issues. And so what can the government do to maintain our reputations in Canada as a reliable and trusted partners, actually, for other countries?
Well, the good news is that we are. There isn't anywhere that I travel where the Canadian brand is just not completely highly regarded and coveted. Part of that is, I mean, everyone has experienced some supply chain hiccups, particularly post-COVID, because, and then, of course, the war in Ukraine. Those supply chain disruptions are very real, and we have to keep working to make sure that that not only do we understand them, but that we're taking real steps to make sure that we are, that we're solving for them. But our reputation is really strong, and I think that is a feature that Canada enjoys. We enjoy it better than anybody else in the world. And that is really, really positive. So we're known for quality, we're known for integrity, we're known for being the rules-based country that actually that can be trusted. So I saw this sort of very firsthand in Japan, of course. Their minister was over here just a number of, probably a little over a month ago, with a number of large OEMs from there. That's hugely encouraging for Canada, and it's actually based on a trusted relationship, and it's based on one because we both share values. We share values of democracy, we share values in the respect for the rule of law, so therefore our trade agreements actually mean something and mean a lot, and we can go to the bank on that. And I think we need to keep doing that, and I think we need to keep working with others who also are prepared to work with us by negotiating and agreeing to agreements to which we then have the modus operandi for us to work. And especially countries where we're at the negotiating table now, because they're different. And but when you sort of sit across from each other at a negotiating table, you actually are agreeing to things together. And you also agree to mechanisms together that will help you solve for disputes or deal with issues as they come up in a trading relationship. And the trading relationships, as large as the ones that we all have, you rely on those sets of rules. You rely on the strong relationship Canada has diplomatically with our trading partners. And frankly, we rely on all of you, because businesses and Canadian businesses that operate abroad, who wear with them and who operate with kind of integrity, deploying responsible business conduct, that becomes a choice for business. It becomes a choice, and it becomes a choice for long-term investors and businesses and countries and businesses who want to do business with Canadians. So I think we keep doing that work, and all of you, frankly, I mean, you're the ones who are in addition to the, perhaps the diplomatic work we do, I mean, the countries see you. And when you are growing in a market, and I hear time and time again, they're so excellent. They contribute not only, commercially, but they've done these wonderful, they've contributed so wonderfully in a community. I hear that all the time, and I often think, I hope other people can travel to, I hope that people are actually a fly on the wall in some of the meetings or, some of the exchanges I have, because it will make you, if you're not already, which you already are, I know I am, a proud Canadian, boy, do you ever get even prouder. Catherine and I were at something at the OECD not that long ago, and we were around a table among the OECD countries, and we were talking about green aluminum, we were talking about green steel, and we were talking about how we have the greenest in the world, and how by working together, we can actually deal with the excess capacity that is in there, because we know and we have paid the price for being green, and that's where the world is and going to even more. But that ought to put us at a commercial advantage, and I believe it is putting us at a commercial advantage. So it's actually industry and governments working together to make sure that some of those rules that are there are rules that continue to serve our industries and serve them well.
All right, I think we're getting the cue from your staff. So thank you so much, Minister. It's really nice for you to come in. I know how busy you are. So we're looking forward to continue working with you.
I wouldn't miss this. Come on, you guys. My main stakeholders, come on. Thanks. Thanks so much. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Minister Ng, and thank you, Elise. It is really incredible that we have an advocate like Minister Ng to help us look for those avenues of export growth, because we've talked about this as exports, as we heard earlier, are a really important part of building our wealth and continuing to build our economy and continue to help manufacturing, because that's a really positive part of our journey, which is, let's look at the headwinds we have here internally, but also let's make sure we have those avenues to be able to sell and across the world. We're now going to touch on another aspect that is in our report related to no matter what solutions we have for export and other reasons, we have to have that talented and that diverse workforce with the right skills that we need to be able to take advantage, whether it's our trade agreement with the U.S. or the various trade agreements and avenues outside. So our next panel, we're going to have two good friends of CME to talk. One, I'd like to introduce the Honourable Randy Boissonnault, Minister of Employment, Workforce Development and Official Languages, as well as Rhonda Barnett, who is the CEO of Palette Skills, and many of us in this room know her as a former chair of CME. We'd like to have them come up, and we're going to talk about how to get the workers we need. I'll give a little bit of introduction first. First, the Honourable Randy Boissonnault was first elected as a Member of Parliament for Edmonton Centre in 2015 and re-elected in 2021. He is a successful entrepreneur, community leader, philanthropist with a strong record of leadership in business and public service. He's previously served as Minister of Tourism and Associate Minister of Finance, and as Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Canadian Heritage. He's a strong advocate for his riding of Edmonton Centre and worked to help his own community. He held degrees from the University of Alberta's Campus Saint-Jean and Oxford University, where he studied as a Rhodes Scholar. A former CME board chair, Rhonda Barnett has over 3 decades of experience as a female trailblazer, achieving great heights in male-dominated industries. She's a STEM graduate in mathematics and a successful entrepreneur and director, as well as a key voice for Canada around the world on industrial policy and skills. And she's a champion for building the skilled labour force of the future, and as such, she was recently appointed as CEO of Palette Skills, a national not-for-profit focused on meeting the needs of Canada's most innovative companies by upskilling workers from diverse backgrounds to transition into new industries. Rhonda has held various positions in her own manufacturing company, and she was also, as I said, the first woman to chair CME's national board and the founder of our Women in Manufacturing initiative. So with these two incredible experts, I think we can look forward to a very, very exciting conversation, and I can ask them both to come up and join us here on the podium.
Thanks, Dennis. Welcome, Minister Boissonnault. I think we don't have a fireside chat. We have something else planned, but we could. Do you want to sit there, or do you want to stand here? You want to stand?
I'll wait. I know you're going to run through the report and then want a fulsome response.
I do, yeah. So you're in for a real treat. I've had the privilege of witnessing, participating in one of your recent speeches at the Empire Club, and this man is he's pretty passionate about the workforce in Canada. But so let me start. So this is a moment for me. So I'm back home. I feel like I'm back home. It's really great to be back in this room on this stage where I've spent a lot of my life and started my journey. This is really where I started my journey as being a champion for workforce innovation in Canada. CME really gave me the platform to dig into this and the support and resources to do meaningful things, and that really set me on a really great path, and now I'm able to give back in meaningful ways in Canada in my new role. I was also recently on the Industry Strategy Council with Minister Randy Boissonnault a couple of years ago, and started to really think about workforce innovation strategy. So I think what we're really talking about here today is the beginning of that. I think Canada really needs a workforce innovation strategy, and CME is calling for one from a manufacturing perspective. I'd give you just a couple of notes on pallet skills because people are curious, they don't kind of understand, and then I really want to jump into the report. But you know, I'm the CEO of Pallet Skills. I've been in this role for 2 years. We have a mandate to deliver on a major federal investment of $250 million out of ISET to build talent pipelines for industry. Within that investment, we're going to help workers realize their full potential, and we are going to give employers like you the job-ready, skilled talent needed for you to compete and grow. That's what we're going to do. So we're going to play a piece of what's required in this workforce innovation strategy. So to think about what we do, and I'll just say that the project name of what we were funded to do is called Upskill Canada. So that's pretty obvious. What's that from a manufacturing context? Because I always think that way. It's really, this $250 million investment is a retooling program. It's a retooling program for the workforce. And we need, if we're going to retool our plants and move to the future, we need to retool our workforce. And so that's at Pallet Skills what we do. So I'll talk just briefly then about our model and then go into the report. But I think we heard earlier today, we've heard a lot about labor force, talking about Canada being top in the OECD for achieving post-secondary degrees. We think that that's a great thing. So I would say we have a highly skilled workforce. It's not just about not having a skilled workforce. We have it. And in fact, about 1 million of those people are unemployed or underemployed. So at Pallet, we don't view the issue solely as a skilled labor shortage. We view this as a skilled gap or mismatch. And so we are here to help retool the labor force to build talent pipelines in Canada by bridging human potential, highly skilled people that are mid-career workers that are underutilized in your facilities, or to bring them into your facilities and take them through short cycle, industry-focused training and directly into the jobs that you have for them. So that's what we're here to do. So let's focus on the issue at hand from the report of expanding and upskilling the manufacturing workforce. So we've heard a lot today about the headwinds. So manufacturing sector is facing headwinds and challenges. Alan detailed that over lunch. We see it in the numbers, but I think that the real impact of this can be felt in individual stories. The company that can't find the skilled workers it needs to maximize production, expand, and grow, and so it struggles while its competitors gain ground. Or the worker with years of experience denied the opportunity for good new jobs because they lack a certain skill that has become essential in the last few years. Companies and workers alike in Canada are falling short of their potential, and we're going to have a conversation about that. So I'm excited about the report we're discussing today because even though it outlines a range of issues and pressures that confront the manufacturing sector, it also outlines a path to progress, a series of steps we can take as a country to address labor shortages, overcome the skills gap, and create better outcomes for both our businesses and our workers. So specifically today, I want to highlight 7 key recommendations. They're up on the screen there from the report things that the government can begin to do right now to ease the labor shortage and help us get on the road to a more successful, advanced, and competitive manufacturing sector. So I won't go into all of these in any detail. I'm going to really focus a lot of my comments on number 5 because that's where I spend a lot of my time. But number 1 is around modernizing the immigration and temporary foreign worker programs. I think we all see this as a vital component in that workforce innovation strategy. Labor shortages, we know, are costing the Canadian economy more than $1 billion a month in lost value. Modernizing Canada's immigration and temporary foreign worker programs, we think, is the most efficient, effective, and immediate way to increase the number of skilled workers in Canada. It's a lever that we simply must pull if we are serious about addressing the labor shortage. Number 2 is about housing. So I think that's it's at the forefront right now in every discussion. And so we've brought that into this report because we need the conditions for workers to be able to afford. If we're going to bring more workers, we need homes for them to locate near their jobs. So I think housing needs to be part of this complex workforce innovation strategy. And I don't think that needs a whole lot of more explanation. This is a big one. I think number 3 is a really important one from a CME context, and that is really about employer-led training and having some kind of tax incentive to offset this. You know, what we would really value as a sector is, you know, if we can have the government help put tools directly in the hands of employers, because they know what they need to do. They know the investments that they need to make in training better than anyone. So I think, you know, as a country, we could really compete in this area if we could give employers the direct tools to fund training. Number 4 is around youth, and that's a place I spent a lot of time when I was chair of CME, because I was really looking at how do we bring talent to the sector, and I was looking at underrepresented, and in that pocket of talent, we really saw that youth were not joining this sector at the rate we'd seen 30 years ago. So we really, we all understand that the workforce is aging, more and more workers are near retirement. We've suffered an image problem, I think, with youth of today, where they think of us as old, dirty, dying, and we've got to change that. We've got to really make young people aware of what manufacturing in Canada looks like today, and the government can play a really important role in this space to really help us bridge access and awareness to young people in Canada. I know CME was running a program that was federally funded a few years ago called Open Doors, and that really brought young people straight into the factories across Canada so they could have, you know, awareness of what the factories look like and what the jobs look like. So I think we could double down on that. Number 5 is where I want to, you know, spend some time. So that's renewing and increasing funding for programs that encourage more members of underrepresented groups to seek a career in manufacturing. This is certainly where I've spent the last 7 years of my advocacy work and my work with CME and other organizations. I saw that it came up on the display that's how I know it's 7 years, that it's going to be the 7th annual Women in Manufacturing Success Forum in March of 2024. So please come out to that. It's a impressive movement, and that was funded by the federal government when we started that for 3 years. And I think we need to have more funding for these kinds of programs if we're going to really solve social problems in the economic institutions of Canada. We need the support of government to do that. So, you know, I've been a big champion in Canada and around the world for women in manufacturing, and I was just at the World Manufacturing Forum a year ago, and we issued a report that said, in the world, and Canada's no different, you know, if we don't do anything different around gender equality for the sector, it'll take 135 years doing the status quo to get to gender equality. So we have to do something different because we need everybody to participate in the solution. You know, I think we can't afford to leave behind whole segments of our population. We need the best talent, and that's the best men and the best women, the best people from across the spectrum of heritage, upbringing, and background. So I think that that's a lever that I would really be interested in hearing your thoughts, Minister, because I think governments really play an important role here. The last two are quick. Reforming employment insurance. I think that manufacturers see that there's some aspects across the country that de-incentivize labor force. So we really want to see reforms that would help incentivize labor force participation in a way that serves the interests of both workers and employers. So we're calling for that. And lastly, it's around tech adoption. We've talked a lot about that today. And we feel that as we move along this trajectory of lifting people up to higher value, more rewarding activities in employment, we need more automation and more investment there. So that's the 7 recommendations. And Minister, we look forward to your response to these recommendations and to hear what your government's thinking about to support this workforce innovation strategy.
Let's hear it for Rhonda, everybody. Setting the table. Ready for the ministerial response. So thank you very much, not just for setting up this conversation about expanding and upskilling the manufacturing workforce, but for you personally, being such a trailblazer for innovation in manufacturing and for women in manufacturing. So thank you, congratulations, and keep doing the good work because we appreciate it. Congratulations. Thank you. Dennis, where did Dennis go? Thank you for taking me back to Oxford days when I had hair. So I appreciate that, and it's great to be here with all of you today. I want to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Anishinaabe and Algonquin peoples, and I just want to thank you all for the work that you're doing to build up and build Canada and build things that the world wants. And thank you for sharing the long title, Minister of Employment and Workforce Development in official languages. I've shortened it. I'm the Minister of Jobs and Official Languages because it's what people understand. And it's what we're talking about. And Rhonda, I'm very happy that you mentioned the puzzle that I'm going to throw out to some of the smartest people we have in the country, all those of you assembled here, because we do have 780,200 vacancies today and 1 million people who want to fill those vacancies. And so we have a wicked problem. We have an issue here. We have a skills gap. We have a geographic gap. We have people who want to work not having the skills they need for the jobs that you and others have for them. So where I wanted to go today with my remarks, and I will touch on, I think, if not all 7, pretty close to all 7, Rhonda, of the things that you've put on the that you've set the table with. The workers that you employ and the workers that you seek to attract are crucially important to our country's economy today, and even more so for the economy of the future. And when we look to that future, when we look to tomorrow, guided by CME, guided by people like Lisa Raitt and Anne McClellan, who are on us every week about productivity, and let me just, before I get to the crux of what I want to talk about today, I became politically aware around 1982. I was 12. And I remember the Conservatives and the Liberals then talking about our productivity gaps with other countries in the world. I am now 53. And 41 years later, we're still dealing with this productivity issue. So before my nieces and nephews are 53 or 55, let's figure out a way collectively to actually break this problem down in bite-sized chunks and get on with it, because I don't want to be 93 and have us still be talking about productivity gaps. So Lisa, you and Anne have my engagement to work and do what I can in my ministry, which, friends, if you don't get money from CRA, from the federal government, and you're a worker in this country, it comes from ASDC. It's 37% of the government's expenditures, 43,000 staff across the country, and it's so big that there are 6 ministers. Okay, that's the department that I now represent. And why does all of this matter? Because Canada has what the world wants. And the world changed February of 22 when Russia invaded Ukraine. And our allies are looking at us like in a way that they've never looked at us before. And a fully functioning, innovative, diverse workforce that helps us build up the country, make amazing products that the world wants, and that continues to play our role on the global stage is the very promise of Canada. So that's what I want to talk about, Rhonda, because CME is critical in our goal as a government to make good on the promise of Canada. So it's right in your report. Access to a large, high-quality workforce is critical to manufacturing success. It boosts output, productivity, and profitability. It also drives innovation and is vital to taking the fullest advantage of new technologies and production methods. I agree, wholeheartedly. So how do we get there? And at risk of repeating myself, let me say this. A high-quality workforce is essential to Canada's future economic health and ultimately to the well-being of every Canadian. Back to that wicked problem that I talked about earlier. Now, you know the labour market is tight. We've already talked about that. Now, my friends, while Canada's economic growth is high, challenges come when we outpace the ability for many businesses to find the workers with the right skill sets. And your recommendations here are critical to reversing those trends. So what have we done? Between August 21 and August of this year, new Canadians accounted for 1/3 of our employment growth, and non-permanent residents accounted for about 1/5. And why have we done what we are doing with our immigration targets? Because 100% of our labour force growth now comes from newcomers. Think about that. 100% of our labour force growth now comes from newcomers. And by 2032, the entire growth of our population as a country will come from newcomers. And we are steadily doing a better job of integrating and settling people so that 6, 7, 8 years out, they actually stay and become Canadian citizens if that's what they wish to be. Dans mes chers amis, nous reconnaissons le travail que les travailleurs étrangers temporaires jouent pour nos entreprises locales, particulièrement dans le temps de pénurie de main-d'œuvre. So we extended the measures to continue to allow many sectors still experiencing labor shortage to use the temporary foreign worker program to fill those gaps. And I continue to hear you that you'd like to see that be a longer-term extension. You asked for it, you lobbied for it, you pushed it, and we delivered a recognized employer pilot program. It's coming. If you've had 3 successful LMIAs over the last 5 years, you're going to be ahead of the queue, it's going to be faster, and you're going to have a streamlined process so that you can get more workers onto your shop floor. And my friends, let me just say to you that has caused some ripples across the country. Not every sector in our country is happy with a recognized employer pilot, and I'll get into that in a minute. Now, we know that many sectors rely on temporary foreign workers, and we know that most employers are respectful towards foreign workers. But in the rare cases of employers engaging in mistreatment or abuse, or failing to live up to their commitments, I need to be extremely clear. Those employers will pay the price. I'm putting on my Alberta hat right now. There's a new sheriff in town. And if anybody's abusing workers, I'm calling them out and I'm fining them. And we will pull your LMIA payments. It may not be you, it may not be your sub, but it may be a sub of a sub. And just know that if you don't have a code of conduct in your sub industry, you need to start building one now. Because that's what's going to help me float all boats. Because the counter argument to temporary foreign workers coming to this country and having a decent living and having health care is wage suppression. And it might surprise you to know that only 3 provinces in this country extend health care to temporary foreign workers when they're here. I need your help at the provincial level to change that. We can and must do better. If you're going to ask us as a federal government to do more on temporary foreign workers, then we as a country need to do more for temporary foreign workers. I need your help with this, and then I'll be able to deliver more. And to make sure that we keep attracting global talent to Canada, we created a new category-based selection for express entry to make it easier for in-demand workers and sectors to come to Canada. And Rhonda, it was funny because I get the seven list, right, in a briefing note. Yeah. And they say, here's what you're responding to in your speech. I'm like, no, show me the meat, show me the report. So I read the report. And I know you want more provincial nominee access. And I know you will know that we have increased the provincial nominee access considerably since 2001. Lisa's team did it. Our team is doing it. We're going to continue to work with you. The provinces also need to be at the table and be very clear about which national occupation codes they want to scope in. And as I'm about to negotiate labor market transfer agreements, which is billions of dollars a year to train 1 million people a year that hopefully end up in your businesses, we need to make sure that what the provinces are training for, what the tech institutes and the education system and unions and your own businesses are solving for are the big, wicked problems of the day. So yes, it means housing, which I'll get to. Yes, it means childcare. Yes, it means people that are helping us to manufacture what the world wants. And now my team is saying, where is he going? Because none of that was in his speech. So look, let's talk about, Rhonda, you mentioned that we're approaching a bit of a cliff in some of the report. I'll tell you, friends, we got 700,000 skilled trades workers ready to retire by 2028. 700,000. So add that to the 780,000 vacancies I just told you about, And you see where we're going. And in my own province of Alberta alone, we're currently 30,000 skilled trades workers short, and another 40,000 are retiring in 5 to 8 years. And when I talk to my counterparts in the workforce development sector, they are talking to their education counterparts, and I need you to do the same because it's provincial responsibility. We have to esteem the trades earlier in life. Full stop. We have to esteem the trades earlier in life. My 22-year-old nephew, Ethan, is heating up pipe at Leadcore in Nisku. He might be in Genesee 3 weeks from now. He might be in Fort McMurray after that. And you know what he said to me at Thanksgiving weekend? He said, Uncle Randy, what's that federal saving thing that you have for houses? Because I want one by 30. And I know with the money that I'm making, I'm going to be able to save enough to put a down payment on my own house. He's a 22-year-old kid. And he said, yes, I know my sister's at NAIT, Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, studying design and visual communications. And he says, I might decide to go do more upgrading and more upskilling later, but I'm really enjoying what I'm doing now. And we need to esteem the trades earlier in life. And so I think it's number 2, housing shortage. When we left Cabinet Retreat this summer, and when we left National Caucus Retreat in London this summer, there were 3 words: build, build, build. That is the mantra. Build more homes in every part of this country using every lever possible to take the pressure off, full stop. We need 3.5 million homes built in the next 10 years. Let's break that down. 350,000 home starts a year, each year for the next 10 years. $2 trillion from the private sector. That is 80% of the entire Canadian economy in 1 year. We're not going to put $2 trillion on the table to build the homes we need. We need the private sector, your friends and colleagues who are going to help us do that. Because we're a growing country. And guess what? We're not going to get there without welders, without pipe fitters, without carpenters, because you need places for the people that you want to work in your companies to call home. You need that, and it's in your report that without that, we're going to continue to have a constraint not just in labor, but in housing. And I'll give you an example that's right in the middle of what you do. So Landmark Homes, out of Edmonton, Reza Nazari, has created a factory that produces panels of homes on assembly line using robots run by very highly skilled humans. That is the way of the future. They literally come off the assembly line, they go onto a flatbed trailer, they go onto a site, and they put up the homes modularly, and they were built on an assembly line by robots designed by people like you. So why is that important? Because it's part of the promise of Canada, that you can come here and that you can actually have a home and a good job, and ensuring that our workers have the skills they need is part of it. So I talked to you about the labor market development agreements, over $7.5 billion into skills development. You don't necessarily see the Canadian flags when you go to Alberta Works or Ontario Employment or Nova Scotia Employment, but you will when we get to the other side of these negotiations, because we know that we're all in this together. And training 1 million people a year is no small feat. You wouldn't want us to do it from Ottawa, which is why we do it in every corner of this country using our provincial and territorial partners. We also removed the interest on Canada student loans to allow more people to have more access. The apprenticeship incentive grant also keeps people trained up and making sure that they are ready for the work that you have for them. And when you talk about underserved groups, Rhonda, I need cover from this group when we go and do this work. Because when we insist that you're putting Indigenous people in your companies, that you're hiring LGBTQ2, that you're hiring women, that you're hiring persons with disabilities, that you're bringing asylum seekers and newcomers into your businesses, I get pushback sometimes. And so I need you to give us cover, and I need you to say, this is the workforce of the future, and we're going to do our part to train up. And I can tell you, since we've launched the apprenticeship strategy, we've funded more than 8,600 women in trades. And we need to keep growing that number. And organizations like Women Building Futures, started in Alberta, now going to Saskatchewan, expanding to Manitoba, those are the kind of things that we need to see. Et mes très chers amis, si vous voulez savoir comment on a pu avoir plus de femmes dans le marché du travail, regardez le Québec. et le fait qu'ils ont eu un système de garderie à $10 le jour pour 20 ans, and that $30 billion that we unlocked to get childcare, $10 a day across the country in partnership with all provinces and territories, has taken us from 69% women in the workforce to 85% women in the workforce in less than 3 years, and now we outpace the United States in terms of women in the workforce. So we are serious about unlocking the full potential of all Canadians, because your numbers are my numbers, Rhonda, and we know that it's $1 billion a month, and I want that money to come into our own backyard. So my friends, how do we work together for you to get Indigenous people into your workforce, people with disabilities? Have you unlocked the talent of some of your youngest and brightest? Because since the 1980s, Canada's per capita GDP ratio has lagged behind that of other developing countries, including the US. And my friends, we also lag in terms of investment in training. So I'm prepared to work with you and see what we could do to make sure that you could have, some consideration from the government for the training, but I need to see the numbers. StatsCan needs to see the numbers that you're investing in your people so that we can make a case that we want to do even more. And how do we tackle this? Together. And when we look around the world, all the countries that do this well, they have a common theme of labor and business and government all being at the same table, working towards the same goal. And I know that you do what you do extremely well. I'm going to end with a quote from Khalil Gibran, who says that work is love made visible. And generous work is generous love. And you guys are tough nuts to crack. You're all smart people, engineers and business people, but I know how much you care about your communities. And I know how much you care about this country. And I know how much you care about your employees. So let's keep doing this work together, because it is how we build up our businesses. It's how we build up our communities. It's how we build up our country together that we will, together, deliver on the promise of Canada. Thank you. Merci. Hi, hi.